Hello, and welcome to the third of our Triple Threat Mondays. I guess that's a witty enough name. I don't know. Uh, welcome to the third interview where we have L.A. Barnitz, who is, you guessed it, another author. I mean, like, what else we only do authors over here. Come on
That's right.
now. So, L.A., not Los Angeles, but Uh,
No, no, and you can call me Laura. I mean, I
okay.
use LA for the books, but you can call me Laura.
All
Mhm.
right. Okay, Laura. Just tell the people a little bit about yourself and what type of fiction that you write, and just take the floor.
Okay, okay. Well, I would tell you that I have just released my first fantasy novel. Came out in June of this summer, and it's called The Stonebound Heir. It's an epic fantasy. It's the first book in a trilogy, and I have worked on that for a very long time, but I am very proud of it, and I've been excited about the reaction to it. So we'll get more into that, I'm sure. But I also love science fiction and horror, and I am working on a horror novella right now as well as the second, also doing the second book in the series. So that's what I'm doing right now. I used to write, years ago, I used to write more short stories and more like contemporary lit fiction. But I'm definitely loving the epic fantasy right now.
Oh man, I mean, epic fantasy is it's such a it's such an exalted genre, in my opinion, because it's like the epic fantasy is you know what everybody pictures as the great American novel. Now, the great American novel is more in a literary sense, but I think more in modern times, the picture of that great American novel has changed and it's become more of that epic Brandon Sanderson type of fantasy, you know. And it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, first off, just the page number alone, like you gotta you gotta write a book that's this big is like that's a tall order. And you gotta make it make
Listen,
sense, and you gotta make the story interesting enough to where someone wants to read this,
that is
you know?
correct. That is correct. I think the cardinal rule is do not bore people. They cannot be bored. That's no good. So if you're going to write long, like I seem to have to do,
Right.
you're like, I better have a plot that stands up for all these pages. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know, I think, for me personally, when I'm actually sitting down and writing, writing long is not even an issue because it's just that the ideas just keep coming, and I'm more action oriented, so, like, as long as there's action going on, like, I could just keep going and keep going, like, there's a book that I'm working on right now that I pretty much had to split it up because I wanted to finish it by Christmas, but the
Uh,
way it was going, I was like, I'm at
nope.
700 pages already and it's nowhere near finished. I'm only
Okay.
like 50 to 60% done with it. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just chop it up here
Yeah.
and I'll have that be the first
Yeah.
volume and work on the other stuff later. You know?
Trust me. Yeah. My God. I mean, mm, I didn't know. I mean, I'm very much a pantser. Like I'm not good
Yeah.
at
Same, same.
plotting in advance. I'm not good at it. So I just was going rolling with the story. And then when I found my beta readers, I was like, oh my God, this is so long compared to their work. I was like, oh, it's like about 190,000 words. So I was
Yeah.
like, please just tell me where I can cut this. Just, I will
Right.
cut it in half. I will cut it in thirds. I would do anything. They're like,
Right.
no, nope, you can't. You can't. And I'm like,
Right.
that's what I was afraid of. So there we are.
I mean, hey, that's that's kinda like the gift and the curse of being that good, like, you're in your
Well,
wheelhouse.
yeah. I mean, it takes a reader who wants to invest that time. That's
Yeah.
it. You know? So, I hope that people will love it. And so far the reviews have been good, so I can't complain.
Yeah, and I'm glad, and let's go into your book. Wait, what was it called again?
The Stonebound Heir.
The Stonebound Heir, okay. So, like, what's the premise of the story? Without giving too much away, of course.
Right. Well, there are so many characters in this book that I had to do a character list at the end. But the two main characters are a boy who's 14 years old, who just wants a better life and thinks he's cut out for better things. And he has an opportunity to take advantage of a certain situation and improve his status in life early in the book. And he does that, and then, consequences follow. And then the other main character is a teenage girl. She's like 16, who they grew up together with a guardian. And they're not, they are orphans. They came to this guardian at different times. But anyway, she never wanted to leave home, never had that in mind, but events in the beginning of the book force her on a journey to catch up with Sid, the boy. And she is, she has she has an unusual appearance for people in this world. And so she's distrusted and disliked, and she's basically pretty alienated from the world. And so she's like, he's all the family that I have, or, the only friend that I have. So I got to catch up with him. And it's what happens to the two of them on their journeys, and later when they meet in a realm that is ruled by a mercurial Maharani who is driven by her own demons,
Right.
and what happens there, and the political intrigue that's going on in this realm. So,
Right. It's got to be
yeah.
strange, writing stories that have like politics in it, given everything that's happened so far. I mean,
I
hey,
try not to
yeah,
go there, like not
right. That's
specifically,
when you mentioned that, I was like, I mean, I know you
Well,
had to, you had to duck
you
and dodge that issue.
right. I mean, it's you can't write what we're going through now. You just can't. But
Yeah,
there is, I mean, it's political intrigue similar to like the competing houses in Game of Thrones. You could say that
gotcha,
there's some
gotcha.
similarity there.
Okay, gotcha. But I wanted to say that, like the beginning of like your premise, it sounds a little bit like The Great Gatsby. I haven't read that, but like I know pieces of it. So like it sounds like, like a guy who wants
The-
the finer things in life, and then a girl who's just like normal. She's just like, nah, like I'm good here. And
yeah,
then circumstance forces her to like leave.
yeah,
And then she's following him, and they're just going through this whole whirlwind of adventure that, he's okay
yeah.
with. He's like, yeah, like I'm trying to get to
Oh
better things.
yeah, oh
But she's
yeah.
like, why am I here? I just want to go
Exactly.
home.
Yeah, that is pretty close to the premise for sure. Like
Yeah,
in the beginning, but things change as the book goes along.
gotcha.
One of the characters, situations improve, the other ones fall, and their
Yeah.
loyalty to one another is really tested.
Oh man, I mean that I don't know. I kind of like that, and whereas like two diametrically opposing things happen at the same time, but they somehow have to get reconciled in the end. Like, another character's situation improves, the other one goes down, but somehow they have to circle around and then come back here. And
Yeah,
it's just like, as a writer, that's the fun part, but it's also the most difficult part because
that is
now you
true.
actually have to, oh, okay, how can I work this?
You
How can I
gotta.
work this? And, especially if you have like a projected page count that you don't want to go past, it's like, wait a minute. All right. If I do it this way, then I'm going to have to add like at least 5 to 10 extra pages because that's how long it's going to take to work it out. But if I cut this part here, then I got to go back and cut out the
And
other
cut the
part
other.
because if
Exactly.
I don't
They
cut
had to
that out,
balance. They
and
had
then
to
it's like,
balance.
this doesn't make sense. and then it's like, oh man, now you're just like, okay, where do I put what?
Mhm. Very true, very
Uh,
true. Yeah, you definitely have to, I mean, it's probably the most challenging part of writing is if you've got multiple main characters, you've
yeah,
gotta balance them out, so
right. I don't know. I mean, I've definitely read stories where like it was funny that you mentioned that you had so many characters you had to write a character list. I was like, oh god. I mean, like I don't know if I could write a story with that many characters because like I could write it, but I just don't want to have to keep track of them all.
Oh my
Like
gosh,
I
that
just
is
don't
a
want to have to do that
challenge,
work.
right? Right, because 'cause you're like,
Like,
"Oh, wait, this one can't be here? This one
yeah.
cannot be here." No,
Yeah,
it's not
I'll just
yeah,
keep it to like 5,
yeah.
like maybe one main character, a second main character, and then like 3 supporting ones, and then like I'll keep it there, you know. Or then I might have a little 6th one that, they made one appearance, but they're gonna
Yeah.
come back like the next book or something like that, or
Right, right.
maybe a trilogy or something of that nature. But like I like to
That's
keep
so
it,
much
I like to keep it concise because the less material you start with, the easier the story goes. But if you have like this abundance of material, it's like, oh shit. Okay. Um, my
You're
my
you're
goal was 50,000 words. Now I'm at 173. Like what? How? you
yeah.
know?
Well, you can't do it I mean, you would never do that. It wouldn't work in, like, in a short story framework. That's why it has to be epic fantasy, right?
Yeah,
So, you have no choice in that, and your idea sounds much more sane. I would definitely go for that, but that is just not what the story would let me do. So, we had to go
right.
long. We had to go long.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess I have more of an iron fist. Like I kind of temper the story. It's like, hold on, we'll get to that later. I'm right here.
Yeah.
And I think about
Yeah.
it, and then, a character idea comes. I'm like, okay, we could put you in. Hold on, we could put you in, but we're gonna put you in right here. Let me get
Right.
this one out the way first. Then we go transition. Like I have more of like I think it's like I would say balance maybe. Like I'm creative, but I'm also analytical enough to kind of channel it and then temper it. Like
Mhm.
some writers are just like they're just all the way creative, but then have no like ability to kinda channel it. So then it goes to the developmental editor, and it's just this big blob of just, like, creativity. It's just like, "Oh my god,"
Yeah, you don't want a blob of creativity, that's for sure, but that's what takes a long time, to
yeah,
edit, to go through your beta readers, to go through a developmental editor situation, to in order to make sure that all your main storyline, but then also your sub stories, right, are
right,
all working. It takes time. So, yeah.
yeah. So, alright, so when you write your fantasies and you have, like, a main story and a sub story, like, is it just like a main story and a sub story, or is it, like, layered? Like, you have a main story, then you have a sub story, but then you have, like, a 3rd side story, and then it's like, it just keeps going like that. Like, which one would you say you are?
Um, I would say that I've got multiple sub stories, but they're really sub stories. There's really like the main action, the main plot story, and then there's the emotional story for the characters. And there are mysteries in this series that get answered slowly. So a couple of the main questions about the origins of these two characters are answered in book one.
Okay.
Enough so you can hang on to it. But there are other things that are going to be answered in books 2 and 3.
Okay, got you. So, like, alright, when it comes to epic fantasy, right? Uh, some writers would say that epic fantasy is mostly like world driven because you have to take
Mm.
time to kind of like craft the environment so that the characters make certain choices. But like, to what degree, like in your opinion, do you think that epic fantasy is world driven as opposed to character driven?
I think on the spectrum of epic fantasy, you can go either way. I mean,
Mm,
there are writers who are really invested in the reality of their world, and that and the plot, the action plot is, what drives it. There are others that are really focused on their characters' growth and change. And I think I'm more on that end of the spectrum.
right.
So I often say that this novel is for those readers who are less concerned with the quest and more concerned about how the characters change over time.
Right.
So I think you can go either way in epic fantasy. Traditionally, oh, okay, well, let me back that up, right? What's
Yeah.
the epic what's the epic fantasy that everybody loves? I can think off the top of your head.
Epic fantasy. I mean, the only thing I could think of is probably like Harry Potter. But
Okay, so there's Harry Potter, maybe you'd say Lord of the Rings,
yeah,
and Game of Thrones, maybe,
right.
okay? So, if you look at those series that were so beloved by so many people, there's a lot of questy stuff going on, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of action that it has to be satisfied in those novels. But I think that what makes them so memorable is the change, the growth in their characters. That's what you're like. Are you on Team Daenerys or are you on Team Jon Snow?
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah, and
so
Akatar, yeah, like that one too.
yeah, exactly. So I lean that way. Now, a lot of epic fantasy that is written and has been popular in past decades has been more, driven by their worlds and their defined quests, and maybe
Right.
they serve, you know for inspire video games, and a lot that's written right now inspire video games, and so that's a different kind of epic fantasy, but it all is part of the same overall genre. So uh-oh, you're
Sorry
in
about
there.
that. It's just
Eh, that's okay.
yeah.
That's
But I mean, I totally agree, that, most epic fantasies has been written to be more so, world driven rather than character driven. But
Mhm,
yeah, it does go like either way.
mhm.
I mean, like for me personally, when, I'm writing a novel, like I tend to just I don't know, I tend to let the world just build itself, like I
Mm,
really center it around the characters, and I focus on like the choices that the character makes in the world, and then like the psychological development throughout the story. And the world just kind of, builds itself. Like I
yeah,
don't
it goes along.
yeah, I don't really need to think about, okay, do I need a building right here, or do I need,
Mm.
meadow to kind of set the mood? Do I need like clouds and rain to kind of set the tone? Like I was like, nah, just you know, focus on the
Go
characters and then the
go
world.
with the action of the character.
Yeah.
Well, for my novel, I really did um, think the world was important because it is an India inspired world. I lived in India for 5 years, and
Oh,
I actually had the idea for this story, beginnings of first ideas before I moved to India. But when I got there, and I'm like able to visit all these amazing historical places, palaces, and a lot of interesting places from medieval Indian history. And I was like, oh, this is where these characters live. So then, I wrote my world with that kind of flavor. It's
okay,
not historical India. It's a
right,
fantastic world, but it definitely reflects the architecture, the clothing, the kind of status that people have is very much inspired by that.
Oh, okay. I kind of like that, because most people think that, fantasy is inspired by fantasy, when in reality, fantasy is inspired by reality.
Mm.
Like, most people would find this counterintuitive. They would say, "Oh, you're a fantasy writer, so you read a lot of fantasy." It's like, no, I actually read a lot of psychology books and like self-improvement novels. Self and they're like, "Wait a minute, you write fiction, but you're reading nonfiction." Well, it actually helps you develop characters better, because the
Mhm.
more you understand human nature and like how the human mind works and human behavior, the more authentic characters you can write in your story. So, like, do you read like nonfiction in order to?
I I do. Uh, I have not been reading much nonfiction except for like the news
Yeah.
um, recently, but I have read, I like history. I've read a lot of history. Um, and you know, I've read a bit about ancient civilizations, that kind of thing. That's been more my nonfiction reading. There's some things that I listen to, like audio. I listen to nonfiction fairly often,
Oh, okay.
but reading wise, I read a lot of fiction, and not necessarily fantasy though. I read a
Right,
lot of
right,
science
right.
fiction and horror also. So,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
all of it, I think fiction and nonfiction is like critical to understanding psychologies. I think you can learn a lot
oh yeah,
from both.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, I mean, I think that's all I have in terms of like, questions and things like that. So if you want to like, take the floor and like, promote your book, if you have a
Yeah.
physical copy, don't be afraid to
Sure.
open up the screen and,
Oh,
uh,
yeah, I
plaster it.
do.
You social media, like, go crazy with the promotion. Hey, this
All
is your
right.
interview. There you go. There you go.
There it
Oh, yeah.
is. There it is.
Uh-huh.
I got
Show
to
the
tell you,
world.
yes, yes. This world that these characters live in, they have two moons. So you might have seen it on the cover there.
Right.
Um, and so this actually becomes a bigger issue in the next books. But I was like, man, what's going to happen with these two moons? So I had to like contact these astrophysics students who in at the University of Colorado, and I'm like, so if this happens and this happens, what's going to be the result? I needed help with the science, so that
Right,
was
right,
fun. That
right.
was really fun. But those kinds of things, I didn't know that that was going to be an issue when I started the story, but
Oh, okay.
it turned out like, okay, I better get this right. Try not to be
I gotta
completely
go in and find
crazy.
some things and then make it all make sense and then,
Yeah,
Of
yeah, absolutely. But no, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. The
course.
the book is out there. It's on every platform. It's on Kobo. It's on Amazon. It's on Goodreads. You can find it on Goodreads. You can get it at Apple Books. It's everywhere. And I am really, really, really hoping, I feel my job is done when I know that there is some writer out there that really loved it. So I'm looking forward to hearing that from my readers, hopefully. And we'll
Right.
see what happens. Book 2 is underway.
All right. And then where can people find you on social media?
You can find me so many places. I'm on Threads, LA Barnitz, and I'm on one of the best ways to find me is on Linktree, which is also LA Barnitz. That way you can find me on all the different platforms. I'm on Facebook as well, and Instagram. So I'm out there. I'm also like really, really excited about, any opportunity to chat with readers. So I've got books in the bookstores here in the Washington, D.C. area. So I'm actually at physical bookstores as well. So
Oh,
that's
nice,
good.
nice. Well,
Yeah.
all right. I'd like to thank you for, having this conversation with me. And, should you need anything else in the future, feel free to reach out. And I'm always happy to accommodate, authors, help them out, anything you need, and that I can do. Hey, just give me
That is a blessing. Thank you. That is so great. It's so
a,
helpful. And I really appreciate the chance to talk with you tonight.
of course. All right. Have a good rest of your night and
Y-
see you on the flip side.
All right. You too.
All right.
Bye.
Hmm.